Thank you for joining. My name is Bill Spencer. I manage the large account relationships for Microsoft Teams, and I'm joined by Christian and Ruby from Valorum, who are going to help out demo Teams. Now, if you have any issues with connecting to the Skype for Business call, or when I switch from the slides to Chris's machine to demo Teams, sometimes people lose the video. I encourage you, if you're not seeing the video and I'm talking about the video, then step out of the Skype for Business session and rejoin, and that generally solves the problem. So we're going to talk about Microsoft Teams, the hub for teamwork in Office 365. And you may be asking yourself, why do I need another collaboration tool in Office 365? We have Outlook, we have Yammer, we have Office 365 groups, we have Skype for Business. Why is Microsoft introducing another? And the reason is because it saves time. The only reason you'd add another tool to your toolkit is if it saved you time. And for many people, they're finding they're managing more projects, and the collaboration on those projects is a bigger part of their time. And what we're hearing from our customers is that the marketplace, so our customers' customers, if you will, are demanding delivery of more complex projects. And technology is enabling that many of the people who they work with internally, partners, customers, vendors, that many of those are working at different time zones, different locations, and because the technology enables it, it adds this level of complexity that we really need a new tool to help solve. And Teams is meeting that need and seeing tremendous growth as a result. So in its first year that it's been available on the market, already there are over 3 million teams that have been created on Microsoft Teams, and over 200,000 organizations are using Teams in 181 markets. And because Teams is available in 39 languages, it's being broadly used all over the world. And a key part of this is that Teams is designed to be a cross-platform product. So it's written as a web application, and then it is wrapped for the Mac and Windows desktops. So the same features ship simultaneously on Mac, Windows, and the web. In fact, most of the time when I'm running Teams on my desktop, I'm also running it in a browser in order to be able to Alt-Tab over and get to, say, a different part of Teams easily within another client. And in fact, when I join, when I'm working with customers and I join as a guest on their tenant, I typically do that within the Edge browser using anonymous or in private mode. And that makes it easy to connect to another client, to another tenant using Office 365. Now, Teams is also available as a native application for iOS and Android. So right now you could go to your Apple or Android store and download the Microsoft Teams client. And if you invite a guest to be from outside your organization to have access to your team, they will be able to download and install the full desktop client or the full native mobile client, or they can just join on a browser. But I find switching tenants to be easiest on the mobile client and using the browser. So here are the design goals for Microsoft Teams. First, it's the one place for all your team activity, combining chat, apps, and meetings. And it's well integrated with the rest of Office 365. So for example, we use SharePoint for storing all the files in Microsoft Teams. But also, it's really a unifying hub for Office 365, where you can think about your documents and various services in the context of the people you work with and the projects you work on, instead of thinking about it from the application that you use. So if I'm looking for data on a particular project, I navigate to that in Teams. I don't think about, oh, is that in Excel or is that in Word? It's available right there, at my fingertips in Teams. And it's customizable, so each chat room or channel, we call them channels in Teams, can be customized for a particular topic or a particular project. And that makes it a really powerful way to manage information and collaborate closely with the members of your team. And it's extensible. So we have over 250 third parties that have written integrations for Microsoft Teams, and that's growing at about 10 to 20 every month. But all this is based on Office 365 security and compliance. So the data is encrypted at rest and the data is encrypted over the wire. Teams supports the EU model clauses, the relevant ISO and SOC standards. So we have audit reports showing that Teams is really the most secure enterprise-grade group chat application available. And all of the compliance for Teams is similar to the compliance for Exchange messages. So it really offers the lowest cost of ownership, and that's before considering the fact that each Office 365 customer can invite as many as 500,000 guests to to be guests on Microsoft Teams at no additional cost. So it's a great way to bring in colleagues that are customers or partners or vendors to collaborate within Microsoft Teams. So now I'm going to ask Chris to take over the desktop. As I mentioned earlier, Chris and Ruby are from a partner, Valorum, and they have been helping many Microsoft Teams customers automate their sales force by using Microsoft Teams. And as I mentioned earlier, if you are going to be a guest on another company's tenant, then I encourage you to do that using the browser in private or anonymous mode, because you avoid any conflict with the multi-factor authentication between your company and the company that you're going to be a guest on. Okay, so thank you, Chris, for sharing your desktop. And I appreciate you volunteering to do this training session with me. So let's just give a high-level overview of Teams starting from left to right. There's three major regions. The dark purple column is the app bar, and you can see the key apps there are Activity, Chat, Teams, Meetings, and Files. I mentioned all those integrations, the 250 integrations. You can see those in the store icon. Now, I see Therese is not seeing this right now, and this is what I mentioned earlier. If you're not seeing the view, please exit Skype for Business and rejoin. That generally solves the problem. Okay, so the app bar is the dark purple column, and next to that is a white column that's populated when you choose a particular application. So Chris has chosen Teams as the app, and he's seeing two teams, the sales operation team and the marketing team. And just think about a team, a collection of people. It's almost like a security group or a distribution list in email. But the difference is that there's specific folders or chat rooms, teams, and we call them channels. So in this case, there's the sales operation team, that's the header with the yellow icon, and you can see the ... or the more menu on the right side of this white column, which we call the left rail. And then there are three channels beneath that: general channel, resellers channel, and M400. Now, there's always a general channel that is created by default when you create a new team, and then beneath that, the channels are in alphanumeric order. Chris is also a member of the marketing team, and you can see there's a general and products channel, and you'll notice that the products channel is in bold, and that's because there is a new post there since the last time Chris read that channel. Now, choosing a channel in the left rail, like Contoso Resellers is selected, that populates the light blue area called the main arena. So those are the three areas from left to right: the app bar, the left rail, and the main arena. And let's spend just a moment in the left rail. I wanted to show that the teams are something that you can set up the order for. So if you wouldn't mind, Chris, could you take the marketing team and drag it up above the sales operation team?
No te lo creo que no sepas.
Great. And again, I'll remind people that they should mute themselves if they can. We're getting a little feedback on the line.
Aquí las plumas nunca van a dejar de salir porque
There we go. Great. So you can be on any number of teams. So there's no limit to the number of teams you can be on, and each team has a upper limit of 2,500 members. Now that's going up in the next 6 months or so. We're going to raise that to 5,000, but that's probably about the limit to the size of a team. And you'll see the reason is because we offer such great customization at the channel level that it's just hard to scale that up much above that size. Now in the left rail, let's go from top, in the main arena, the light blue area, let's go from top to bottom, and there's 5 features I want to talk about. At the very top is the search or command bar, and that's a great way to find information quickly. Then beneath that is the navigation bar. So for example, there's the sales operation team and the Contoso reseller channel. Then you'll notice that this team has guests, and that's an item that's right there beneath the name of the team. And then there are a number of tabs. There's the Conversations tab and the Files tab, and then the option to add additional tabs. So we call that the tab line. And then in the body of the main arena, you can see, let's see, 4.5 threads. So in channels, the conversations are threaded, and you can see that Ali Baloo has one thread that Bill has replied to. Then Bill started a new thread beneath that. There's a thread that has actually deleted messages, and then finally there's Jamie Redding's post on call volume increasing. And each one of these is a thread that you can add to. So Chris, if you could just reply to, say, Ali Baloo's thread, the M200. So you just hit the reply button and hit return when you post a new message. Exactly. And then at the very bottom is how you create a new thread, and that is using the compose box. So go into that in a little bit more detail, but that's how you start a new thread. Now, in the left rail, we can actually simplify the reading list of channels, if you will, by unfavoriting one of them. So let's unfavorite the M400, and you'll see that when Chris removes it as a favorite, it's put into a bucket called more channels. And in some cases you might have, in my case I have some with dozens of additional channels, and I'm only focusing on 3 or 4 channels in a particular team. Great. So now let's go through the process of creating a new team specific to our training project. And to click on the button at the bottom of the left rail where it says join or create a team. Now for some of you it'll just say join a team because your IT department has not extended to you the option of creating teams. You probably have a centralized process for creating teams. But in this case at Valorum, Chris can create a team or join a team. When you click on this button, you may see public teams that you can join, but there aren't any from at Valorum. So that's public team. Let's click on create team. Training 10. And Let's change the privacy from private to public so that anyone at Valorum can join this. Now, this isn't public outside of a company. It's only within one particular Office 365 tenant. Guests are only invited to specific teams, access to all the channels on that team, but they don't have the ability to look up other teams. They don't have the ability to look up people outside of the team that they're on. So they can't see, for example, the directory of your company. Click Next. Great, and let's add Ruby to this team. And I think this is an important best practice. Whenever you're creating a team, you always should have more than one owner. In case the owner's on vacation, let's promote Ruby from a member to being an owner. Great. So we've created our new team, and by default there is a general channel. And the general channel is important because that's where Teams logs all the relevant information. For example, anytime a channel is created, so it logs who created that. So it creates an open work environment that everyone on the team can view. And that's a helpful way of when anyone new joins the team, they can go back in history and see the whole history of that team. All right, let's click on one of these helpful buttons in the middle. We can add more people, we can create more channels, we can open the FAQ. Let's create more channels. Thank you, Ruby, for posting there. Let's click on Create More Channels. And let's create an attendee channel. This is important whenever you're doing training to think about who's going to be able to attend. And add that one. Now this takes us into the attendee channel. So in order to add a new channel, let's go to the More menu associated with this training team. Go to the ... that's on the right side of the white column. Click on, see, these are the options. We can remove it as a favorite, manage the team, add channel, add members, leave the team, edit the team, get a link to the team, delete the team. Well, we want to add a channel, the third item down. And let's add a channel for the venues. That's another important thing when you're planning training, is not only who's going to be there, but where the training is going to take place. Excellent. And let's add a budget channel. Go through that same process, the More menu associated with add budget. And then finally, let's add an urgent channel. And I think an urgent channel or an escalation channel is always a good idea. Now you'll notice that the channels are in alphanumeric order. That means if we put a 1 and a dash for urgent, we can make this the second only to the general channel. So let's add in the description that you are the owner for this channel, so that if anyone in the future wants to modify this channel, they can refer to Chris as the owner. And please note that the owner is not always the creator. Okay, so now we've got several channels. Let's go back to the general channel, and to do that, instead of just clicking on it, okay, you kind of led me there. Okay, let's use the back arrows in the upper left. These are just like in a browser. You can go backwards and forwards. Let's show how to back up. Perfect. Okay. So that's always helpful, particularly once you're working in tabs, which we'll show later. It's really helpful to use the back arrows. So let's recognize this nice post that Ruby made. Give her a thumbs up, and you'll see there's a few items that are on a sort of a pop-up basis when you hover on the right side. And I can see that the ownership is going to to Ruby's head. So let's reply to that and say, at Ruby, don't let it go to your head. All right, and hit return. And let's welcome everyone to the team. And just click on the Start the compose box at the bottom and say, "Welcome to the training team!" exclamation mark, and hit return. So that's as simple as a post can be. And you'll see that a number of the actions have been recorded and in between these two different posts. So Teams does a good job of keeping track of things. Now I like to make, whenever I start a new thread, there's a few things I like to do. And one is you'll notice in the compose box that it has this helpful reminder to do an @mention. And that's important. But I also like to add a subject line. To do that, let's click on the A with the pen right below the word start in the compose box. And this expands that box into the compose form. And in terms of the subject line, let's say urgent channel. Great. And let's start out with several @mentions. So first of all, let's @mention Ruby. So you do an @ and start to type her name, and then backspace over her last name just to make it a less formal environment, comma, and then @ and start to type the name channel or the word channel, and that fills in the name of this channel, the general channel, and then comma, and then start to type the word @ and team, and it fills in the name of the training team. So let's click that. Great. And then colon and say, I have created an urgent channel to keep us all on the same page, period, and then hit return. And you notice when Chris hits return, because he's in the compose form, it doesn't send the message. So he can have multiple carriage returns, and then he can say, please follow it. Excellent. Okay. Now we're going to leave this message in its current draft form, which there's always a little bit of a risk for that. But let's go over to the urgent channel and we'll do a few things. I just mentioned this concept of following. Let's show people how to follow a channel. There is a More menu right in the middle of the main arena next to the star. And clicking on that, you can see it includes the options that are specific for the channel: to edit the channel, delete the channel, add a connector, follow the channel, open in SharePoint, get email address, get a link to the channel. Let's follow this channel. And what this does is it means every time someone posts in the channel, it will send a notification into the Activity app, which is the top app in the app bar, and that makes it easy for Chris to know where he should go in Teams to catch up on items. So this is an urgent channel for the team. Now what's nice about following a channel is if you get everyone on your team to follow a channel, if they're not on Teams on a timely basis, and we can talk about timing later, it will send an email message to the user's email inbox. So that's a great way of pulling people from, say, Outlook, which I think most of us spend more time in than almost anything else, and it'll pull them into Teams. All right, so let's show how we can get a link to the channel. Let's use the ... on the left rail, which is something you have to hover on the right side. There we go. Let's hover and bring up the More menu and choose the fourth item down, which is to get a link to the channel. And let's copy that into our clipboard. Use the back arrow if you'd like to go into General. And we're going to continue on our message. Let's select where it says an urgent channel in the body of the post, and then let's use some of these formatting options at the top, one of which is a chain. It looks like two links of a chain, and that's how you insert a hyperlink. And let's insert the link to the urgent channel so people can quickly navigate to it, and click Insert. And you'll notice that it has changed the formatting a bit, but let's make that more obvious. Let's select that text one more time, and let's put it in bold using the B, and underlining it using the U, and changing the font color using the A with the underline. Perfect, and choose whichever color you like there. And then let's select the words please follow it, and let's use the highlighter option to highlight that. Great, choose whichever one of those you want. Excellent, so this is a good post. Now, whenever I make a direct request to fellow members of my team, I like to soften it with some of the fun elements in Teams. And there's 3 of those. Let's show those off. At the bottom there's a smiley face with a circle around it. And let's insert an emoji. And you can see there's quite a few options, whichever one of those you'd like. And hit return. And then let's add a sticker. And that's the smiley face with the square. These are editable memes, so you can choose one of these memes and choose whichever one you like, Chris. There we go. Always popular cat Giphy, and put in whatever inspiring message you'd like to put as the top caption and bottom caption. But what's nice about these is you can it's interesting combination there. Okay, and you don't have to hit return. Let's insert a Giphy right next to it. Let's click on the GIF icon and choose. Let's look up the word thanks. So these we get from Giphy.com, and they can be fun elements. Choose whichever one of those you like. Okay, perfect. Now, we've been hitting return without sending. The way to send the message is to go to the paper airplane icon in the lower right. Now, let's click on that, and that will send our message. So we can see that we've got a title, the urgent message. We have 3 @mentions, and then we have some formatting options, as well as some fun elements. Now, the reason that @mentions are so important is whenever anyone @mentions someone, then they get a notification in their activity app. So this is so important when you are creating a culture around using Teams. You want to include @mentions as frequently as possible, because that will draw someone's attention from the activity app into the chat message or the conversation in channels that you want people to recognize. And when there is an @mention, you can see Ruby just @mentioned Chris. There is the badge, the red badge on the right side. So that makes it easy for Chris to see it. But also, if Chris wasn't in this channel, and Ruby, if you could do an @mention for Chris in, say, the budget channel, and then let's also do an important post for him in the urgent channel. That would be helpful. So if you're in the channel, you'll see the badge show up. But if you're not in the channel, you'll also get a pill count on the activity app and in the left rail. So @mentions really help draw people's attention to a particular post. And in fact, at Microsoft, if you are not @mentioned, there's no expectations for you to read a post. So the activity app becomes the one additional inbox that Teams creates or adds to your workday. And I think you'll find that one additional inbox is worthwhile. It's a time savings in the end, because you really can get work done so much faster in Teams. Now, I mentioned an important message. Let's edit this message in order to add important to it. So hover in the upper right, and you can see that there's 3 icons there. There's the More menu. There's a bookmark. We'll talk about that. There's the like message, which we've already shown once. Let's click on the More menu, the ... and you'll see there's the edit, delete, mark as in red, copy a link. So these are all helpful. Let's edit this and add the exclamation mark that's up in the formatting bar. And that will add this important message in the top, the text there, adds the red. And then we'll notice when Ruby sends an important message from the urgent channel without an @mention, that it will add the appropriate badge there as well in the left rail. So let's go ahead and click on the paper airplane icon in the lower right to send this. And you'll see it has the red badge now in the upper right for an important message. That makes it easy for you to find. Now, because Ruby has @mentioned Chris in the budget channel, there is a 1, and you'll also notice that budget's in bold. That's showing there's unread messages. The 1 means there's at least one @mention there. And there's also a 1 up in activity. That's the same @mention. So we'll get to that. And Ruby has posted in the urgent channel. She did not make it important, so I'm going to encourage her to do that before we click on it. And let's go into the budget channel in order to get some work done on the budget. So let's see what she says here. Chris, are we ever going to get the proposed budget? Are you going full time into making outdated pop culture memes? Okay. So that's a good kick in the pants from Ruby. Let's give her a thumbs up to acknowledge that you're no longer going to work on outdated pop culture memes, and we're going to respond to this message, and we will respond with an @Ruby. Great, and backspace over her last name. Please review and approve my proposed budget, my proposed training budget. And you can attach that using the paperclip icon right there. Now in the background, Teams is creating a SharePoint share for this team and a folder for this particular channel. We want to upload from my computer. We could have chosen from recent files or browse Teams and channels or browse OneDrive, but let's upload from your PC and click open. And notice there is a light green bar, status bar, and if you click on anything it messes it up. So you got to wait for that status bar to finish before clicking on anything. And when that completes, we can hit the paper airplane icon. So what Teams is doing is it is creating a cloud link in the conversation tab, and it is attaching the project budget file to the files tab, which is the SharePoint folder associated with this particular channel. So let's click on the files tab, and we can see the project budget is attached. Now this is a view into SharePoint, and you could open this in SharePoint with the open SharePoint command in the middle, and you'll see that this version of SharePoint has virtually everything that you have in regular SharePoint, except for perhaps setting up information protection or setting up a workflow. But let's go to the ... or the More menu associated with this particular file on the far right. It's actually on the right, Chris. There we go. Thank you. And you can see that for this file I can edit in Teams, I can open in Excel or in SharePoint, I can move, copy, download, delete, rename, get a link, make this a tab. See, now that's a Teams specific feature. Let's click on make this a tab, the last option, and it will add this file to the top of the tab line. And these tabs are editable. So let's click on the Wiki tab, and let's rename that Decisions using the down caret, and we can rename this. Let's try that one. There we go. Rename, and let's call this Decisions. Great. So the way to think about tabs is imagine that you are in a conference room with your whole project team. And that's such a luxury nowadays. It's hard to get most project teams together at the same time in the same place, because so often nowadays we're working with people who are remote. Maybe they're on a different shift at our same location, but more often they're in another location, and sometimes they're working in a completely different continent, so there's very different time zones. And you're in but let's say you're all in the conference room and there's a whiteboard, and as you talk about the project, almost invariably someone will get up and they'll write down, the key decisions that need to be made on the project. And then someone else will get up and they'll draw a timeline or maybe a pie chart or something else that is some of the numbers associated with the project. And then finally someone else will get up and they'll write down the action items and who's going to follow up on what. Well, each one of those sections I just described are similar to the tabs that you can create in Teams. And you can create an unlimited number of tabs. So, you really can have a very rich collaboration with a variety of Office 365 and third-party services right at your fingertips. And everyone in the project teams, when they come to this particular channel, they will see all of the tabs in the same order. So it's a great way to get the whole team to work together and have, not only the conversation in the conversation tab or the files in the files tab, but also to have the relevant metrics in a data tab. You can have several dashboards or budget tabs. You can have a variety of Microsoft services and third-party services added as tabs. So let's click on the options in the plus sign in the tab line and show those options. Now, in your company, you may not have all these applications. You'll probably have the first two lines. Those are the Microsoft Office 365 services, as well as some, no-cost third-party services. But look at the Websites tab. Now, that really is a tab that allows you to integrate so many different services. It could be Microsoft Project Online. It could be Google Docs. It could be any third-party website or your own website or a particular page. Any secure HTTP, or those are also known as HTTPS URLs, can be added as a tab using that website icon. And scrolling down, you can see there's quite a few third-party options that, if your IT department allows, you can integrate these as tabs in Teams. And one common theme is a task list or managing projects. So Asana, GitHub, Jira, MeisterTask, Smartsheet, Reiki, all of these are task management solutions. But let's use one that probably everyone has. Let's scroll up to Planner and click on that. And this is a very simple Kanban board that is a great complement to Teams. It's been out longer than Teams, so it's actually a very nice product in terms of maturity. Let's call this tab Task List and add that. Perfect. So now we have a simple Kanban board. Now let's talk about what we've done. Let's enter a task to create a budget, because we've already done that. So it's good that everyone will see who has done what. Let's set a due date. Put it for today, and you can assign that to yourself. Great, add that task. And then we asked Ruby to approve the budget. So let's have approve budget and set that due date for, maybe the end of the week. Give Ruby some time. She might want to work on some outdated memes. And assign that to Ruby. And add that task. And then one thing you're going to do this week is gather feedback from the team. So let's gather budget feedback from team. Great. Set that due date for maybe tomorrow. And assign that to yourself. Great. Okay. Let's add that task. Now all of these are listed as to-dos, but there's a few different states here. So let's add another bucket on the right for in progress. And we can, for example, take gather feedback from the team and drag that over into in progress. There we go. And some of them are complete. At least one of them is. So let's add a new bucket for complete. And let's take your create budget task and drag that over to that column. Great. All right, now let's get going on create current and hilarious memes. Okay, let's put that in progress as well. And what's nice about this Kanban board is we really can have feedback from the whole team, especially humorous feedback from Ruby, and it's a great way of keeping everyone on the same page. All right, so let's go back into the budget tab and gather feedback from the team. Now, I'm sorry, not the channel, the tab that's called Project Budget. There we go, the spreadsheet. And let's expand this out so it takes over the left rail by using the two arrows. And that helps everyone kind of work on this project. And then let's add a conversation by clicking on the chat icon next to the two arrows. And click on Start a Conversation. And then let's @mention the team. And say, please give me feedback by end of day. That we have sufficient training budget. Perfect, okay. And then hit send. Okay. So what's nice about this is you can have a conversation right here in this tab. So for example, if Ruby wanted more money for legal advice on appropriate memes to add to a training or something along those lines, she could have that conversation right here alongside the itemized items in the spreadsheet. But I just want to show that this is also right there in the conversation tab itself. So let's click on the back button in the upper left, and that brings us back into the conversation tab, and we can see that the conversation is right here in the conversation as well as alongside the project budget itself in the project budget tab. So Teams is a great solution for having very rich and rich and yet informal and quick collaborations around a complex task or project that you've got depicted. Various elements of that project are shown in various tabs, whether it's the conversation itself, whether it's kind of notes you want to memorialize in the Decisions tab or the wiki, whether it is something numeric that might be from Excel or Power BI or a third-party service that's in the Budget tab, or tracking commitments in the task list. But all of this customization is specific to this particular channel. The other chat rooms or channels don't have these same tabs. So let's click, for example, on the Venues channel at the bottom of the left rail, and we'll see that it still has, there, it's got the Files and Wiki tab. It's waiting, for someone to customize it, but it hasn't yet been customized. So that gives you some introduction as to how teams can be created, how you can create channels, add people to the team, add tabs to the channel, and carry on an effective collaboration no matter where someone is, no matter what device they're on, and no matter what time they might be working at. And that's why Teams is really seeing the rapid adoption. It's the most popular, or I should say the fastest growing first generation enterprise product in Microsoft's history. Okay, so we've given an introduction to Teams, the Teams app. Now let's look at the Activity app and think about how your day might begin when you're working in Teams. And in my case, the first thing I do in the morning is I will go and clear my Activity app, because as I mentioned, that's my inbox for Teams, and my most collaborations now are all happening in Teams. So Outlook, while I still spend more time in Outlook than I do in Teams, I've really cut my use of Outlook in half. So for example, I used to spend probably 4 hours a day in Outlook. Now that's 2 hours a day in Outlook, 1 hour in Teams, and I'm saving a full hour because Teams is just so efficient. But the key thing is our culture is that people have to create an at mention in their post, and people find it's just more efficient to do that within Teams than to follow and to read all of my emails in Outlook. So my volume of email has gone down, and the time I spend in email has gone down, and I'm getting more work done with really less time spent in Teams. So let's click on the Activity app, and we can see the notification there. There's that one item that, well, I guess Ruby has commented here in this item with an at mention. And we can filter the left rail by clicking on the thing that looks like a funnel, and we can, for example, find everything that's unread. So this will bring us with kind of a laser right to the key item here, and this is that there are cookies in the break room. Thank you, Ruby. So let's give Ruby a thumbs up. And since we're actually remote right now, say we're heading into the office, let's put a little bookmark on this one to remind ourselves when we get to the office that we want to follow up on that. And you're the only one who sees your bookmark. So bookmark is specific to you, and it's nice because Teams helps you find your place again. You know, in this case, when we read this channel, you can see there is a last red line. So Teams keeps track of where you are in any particular channel. But with a bookmark, you can skip to particular items that you might have already read. Let's go back to the funnel, and let's look for all the places where you are at mention. So let's look at the mentions. So this is a filter I run all the time, and let's say that Ruby has a comment here about memes. Let's bookmark that item where she has the I'm on it. Yeah, let's bookmark that item as well. And you know, when I'm often looking at my activity app, I'm in my mobile device, and I bookmark items a lot when I'm working on the go because I don't have a full keyboard, and maybe I don't have, you know, the time to fully respond. So I'll bookmark these items, and then I'll go and I'll find them in my saved area, and that is up in my personal profile. So that's the picture of myself in the upper right. And here we have a number of options. We can change our status, so our presence, our availability. There's saved as the second item. There's settings. We're going to come to that. But then there's additional items like help, keyboard shortcuts, check for updates, download the mobile app, sign out. So those are various options that are in your personal profile picture. Let's click on saved because this is where all of our bookmarks are saved. And you know, for me, there's a real satisfaction in getting through all of my activity, then getting into the office and going through my saved items. And you know, as I address them, as I go to get the cookies, I might unbookmark that. I can do that either in the left rail. I can, if you unbookmark them, Chris. There we go. I can do that in the left rail, or I can do it in the main arena. And when I process those, it clears that, and then I can get into my chats or my other activities. So it's a great way of managing my communications. Okay, so let's click on chat, and you know, what's interesting is as powerful as channels are in Teams, the chats are the more popular of the features. So this is where most people seem to send most of their messages, is in chats. And we can see that we have a chat going on with Ruby, and you'll notice that there's a different set of tabs across the top. For example, in addition to conversations and files, which you saw when we were in channels, there's organization. Let's click on that. And this is pulled right from Active Directory, so we can see where Ruby is in the organization. We can also see all of Ruby's activities in the channels that she and Chris are on together. So this would be the same as running a search for Ruby, but in this case we're able to see, all of the various things that she's posted on. And this is helpful if you're, for example, trying to find a message that someone mentioned to you and you're not quite sure where it was, and this is a way to quickly find it. But clicking on the plus sign, you can see there's other things. So, if Chris and Ruby have regular one-on-ones, say they might want to track metrics using Power BI. So let's click on Power BI and pull in a report on opportunities. And let's call this, we can choose opportunities under Contoso opportunities, the first report. And let's rename this tab dashboard or performance metrics, whatever. But the key thing is that I think every good channel and every good one-on-one chat has performance metrics, has some kind of measurements, because that's really the power of Teams. It's not just a simple conversation, it's a conversation with critical data. So let's save that, and that will bring up that report from Power BI. But we're not just limited to Power BI. Let's click on the plus icon and let's choose a website. And this is just an example of any URL. Any HTTPS can be brought in. Let's call this one Valorum, and say, for example, that we're working with Valorum and we want to Alt-tab over to the browser, copy a URL that's a secure HTTP URL, and you can paste that into this tab and create this Valorum tab right here within your conversation. So, I think this is head and shoulders above really any other chat service that's out there in terms of the richness that you can bring to a one-on-one conversation. Now, if you're in a group conversation, let's look at the Ali and Ruby group chat, for example. Here we have only two options, the conversations and the files tab. And I want to point out that in a group, in a chat in general, the files are stored in the OneDrive for Business of the user who is attaching the file to a conversation, to a chat. So the key distinction is that in Teams, when you create a team, a SharePoint share is created, and you can have as many as 2,500 people sharing those files. But in a group chat or one-on-one chat, you can have only up to 20 people participate. And this is actually a limitation of OneDrive for Business. So that is the maximum number of people we can have in a group chat is 20. But you can do some nice things like rename the chat. So let's click on the pen next to the star, and we can call this training materials. So we can have a conversation with Ruby and Ali about various training materials, such as this best practices presentation that Chris attached earlier. Now there's another kind of chat, and that is with a bot. And the premier example of that is T-Bot. So let's click on the T-Bot one. And for all of you watching, I want you to, as a sort of a follow-up homework assignment, go to T-Bot, and the first thing I want you to do is click on the star next to the T-Bot up in the navigation bar. Because what that does is it adds another category to your chats, and it adds T-Bot. And you're going to want to find T-Bot again quickly, because you can see there's a couple questions that Chris has asked, like how to follow a channel. We talked about that earlier. If you forget, you can ask T-Bot, how do you follow a channel? And it will give you an answer either from the help or the FAQ tabs, which are the second and third tabs. But it also has this really helpful fourth tab, that is the videos. So if you've got a new member of your project team and you want to get them up to speed on Microsoft Teams quickly, now you'll be getting a copy of the recording of this training session, but you may want to just go through these videos that are included in the videos tab in T-Bot, And they only take about 15 minutes to go through these 8 videos. They're really quick and very helpful. Now there's another tab called What's New, and Teams is going through a lot of innovation. Now instead of clicking on What's New, let's find it using the search box. So up in the top in the search box, let's put in a slash command. And this is kind of another homework assignment. And I want you all to try this out and try each one of these so you can become a power user in Teams. And you'll save even more time knowing how to do things really quickly in Teams. And the way to do this is by experimenting with these different slash commands, including the second to last one called What's New. And so often I would say, every week, every other week, Microsoft is adding a new feature or 3 or 4. We're really at a pace to do 10 to 20 significant features every month. And What's New is a great way to see an update on what those items are. And scrolling down to March 14th, there's one item I really want to point out. That's when we launched our guest access for any sort of Gmail user, any consumer email account, or a company account that they just don't use Office 365. And there's an article link there. So TBOT not only has a quick description in What's New, it also has links to key articles. And I encourage anyone interested in guest access to take a good look at that write-up. Okay, so that's a quick overview of TBOT and the search box. Let's do one more search in the search box. Let's look on the word budget in the search box. So we can see that this pulls information both from the conversation threads as well as in the Files tab. So you can see all the various conversations about budget, and then clicking on Files, you can quickly find the files as well. So that is a great example of how Teams collates and indexes all this information and makes it easy for anyone who's joining a team late to get up to speed quickly by finding information themselves. And then finally, let's go into the profile picture, and I want to show settings. We only have a minute or 2 left. Let's go to settings, and I want to show a few things. One is the dark theme. This is very popular with engineers. It's more restful on their eyes. And then let's click on notifications. And there's a few things here. Again, I think as a team, I encourage you all to create a channel like an urgent or escalations channel to get everyone on the project team on the same page. So anything important, they'll get notice in their inbox. But then you also might want to agree as a group that you're going to focus on individual @mentions and not channel and team @mentions. So you can deprecate the feedback on team @mentions. For example, you could make a team @mention something that just shows up in the feed so that you're not getting a bunch of input on that. And then channel messages, which are kind of the equivalent of being CC'd, let's make that a banner only as opposed to getting email. And therefore, you won't be bombarded with information. But if someone individually @mentions you and you don't get on Teams fast enough, you're going to get an email. Now let's talk about it fast enough. For that, the setting is email frequency. And the default is every hour. And I think starting out, you want to make that a little bit timelier. So let's make that every 10 minutes. And if you're working on a really fast evolving product, you might want to even say, as soon as possible. But the key thing here is if someone doesn't read a notification within 10 minutes in Teams, then they're going to get an email in their inbox. And again, this is a great way as people move from being Outlook only to being Outlook and Teams to bring the people into Teams so the conversation and the collaboration moves across quickly. Great, thank you. You can close out of this. So Chris, and thank you so much. I appreciate all your help and everything Valorum does. I also appreciate everyone's attention and all the good questions. I saw Ruby answered many of them. I'll follow up on the ones we weren't able to answer directly in email. And I appreciate all of you taking the time with me. And I want to emphasize that Teams is a great way to save time, and that's the way to think about it. To use the capabilities like the @mentions and following to use activity as your new additional inbox, and to pull the whole team together with effective tabs and effective channels so that each project can be customized with the right set of information so that collaboration moves quickly and efficiently. I hope you find it, as I do, as a great way to save time, and I appreciate any feedback you have on the product. Thank you all very much.